welcome back to the Money Bear podcast. Today I've got my friend Dennis on. Dennis, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
For sure. I think it's funny how we met. We technically met at FinCon 2020, but neither of us remember meeting each other.
You sent me a photo and we were on opposite ends.
Yeah. And I was like, I can literally think of that bar that we were at. It was like with Jeremy and Mark and Deli. It was like a huge group of people. And I remember specifically, we went to the basement of the bar while we waited for a table. And then eventually we got all seated at like separate tables. And I'm like, holy shit, Dennis, look at this photo. We're in the same photo together.
So some quick context, though, is 2020 FinCon, we actually became friends.
Technically, yeah. Oh, no, 2020. Wait, no, it was 2021 FinCon where we technically met. 2022 FinCon, which was a couple months ago, that's when we were like, oh, we vibe. Like, we're both
so that's where we actually became friends. And then that was just hilarious to figure out.
Yeah. And it was months later. I think I just texted you that photo, like, what, last month? Yeah. Where I was like, Dennis, fun fact, we met before.
I felt embarrassed, but you didn't remember either. So I think
we're clear. Exactly. I was like, I'm fairly certain he would have said something if he had met me the previous year. So I was like, we're in the clear.
Now I won't forget you.
Yeah, exactly. Now I've roped you into the Money Bear podcast and we're going to talk about your life and all that good stuff. So for folks who are listening, tell us who you are.
Yeah. So my name's Denis Trufin. I do YouTube content on obviously YouTube. And I talk about finance. I love what I do. And I've been doing it for, I think, almost 5.5 years at this point. I pretty much just do that all the time. I love working. So I'm an entrepreneur in so many different aspects. But I also have gotten to a point where, and we'll talk more about this, is that I've slowed down on being too aggressive with myself when it comes to business, because I definitely was probably a little bit unhealthy about that process. And yeah, I have a dog, I have a wife, and I love travel. I went traveling through Europe for a year back in 2016. That was fantastic. And I do real estate, obviously the YouTube businesses, and then probably have some other things lined up in the future for sure.
Awesome. I love it. And Dennis is being modest. His YouTube channel is awesome. And what I love about his YouTube channel is that he really shines in tutorials. All the brokerage tutorials. In fact, I'm pretty sure a few of them are inside of the Lazy Investors course, where it's, if you need a fidelity tutorial, if you need a tutorial comparing two different brokerages, he's got it. So we'll leave links to his show down in the show notes for sure. But I want to talk to you today both about your personal finances and your journey through YouTube. But let's start with what even got you into personal finance. Tell me your story.
Yeah, so I'm so fascinated with money, how it works. It's, I think, involved in every aspect of our lives, no matter if we love money or hate it, everything we do, right? For me, it really started when I got my first job and I wasted all of my first paycheck on a Zune, if you know what that is.
What is that?
You don't know what a Zune is?
I love how you said it like I would know what that is somehow.
I was maybe talking to your audience of the person
fair.
And I was like, oh my God, this guy, he knows what's up. Zunes were pretty much the cooler iPods back in the day.
Oh, shit. I can I gotta Google this. Z-O-O-N.
Yeah, go ahead and Google it. They were really cool. And I blew all my money on it. And it was a great music player. I wanted to start listening to my own music. I built up my library of digital content. And I quickly realized that I had zero money afterwards. And I was like, okay, I don't like this. I don't like having no money left over after buying something. So I really started paying attention to how money actually worked in my life, with earning it and then being able to spend it. And very quickly after that, I just started building up like a budget, people would say. But for me, it was really just more about making sure that I understood that I had money that I needed to save for bigger purchases, while also being able to still have fun with the money that I had left over. And then obviously any bills that were required, which at 16 years old, you don't really have lots of bills. But then shortly after getting the job, I got a car payment, which was a dumb idea, seeing how cars are terrible assets. But that's...
Yeah, right.
Right? Yeah. Not that car payments are the worst thing in the world, but yeah, it just gave me the idea of I should pay attention to this stuff. And then years down the road, I just kept focusing, saving money. And then I think the biggest thing for me was at 21 going into 22 of 8, I was able to buy a house in cash.
Dang.
Yeah, I got lucky, but a lot of it was with paying attention to my money and focusing on what it really meant for me long term and what I wanted to do with it. I didn't want to work so hard for it as much as I did at that time already.
Yeah, that's incredible that you got started so young. At 16, you figured out this moment of, wow, I could actually use money as a tool to get a life that I want. I don't think a lot of 16-year-olds have that like forethought or ability to say, huh, this is actually a tool. I certainly didn't. When I was 16, I was like spending everything that came in, even though like I don't think even think the future or saving for the future was even an actual concept for me. Were your parents like really into money, or what do you think caused you to be able to have that deductive reasoning?
Yeah, that's interesting. So my parents are actually foreigners. So I'm actually a first generation US citizen. And so they, not to their own unknowingness, but like they didn't really know a lot about money or a lot of different things in that aspect to be able to teach me. So they were learning on their own. And so I think I was learning alongside with them. My parents went through some ups and downs through that process as well, making pretty big mistakes. And I think for me, my mom was making some of those mistakes and then sharing some of it with me to be able to like not be in that same position. As
Mhm.
a immigrant, she wanted better for me. So I think a lot of that was just giving me some ideas of, hey, save a little bit of money, put some aside. But I think a lot of it honestly just came from just the fascination that I had with it. I think math was something that I cared for and liked in school. And so then it just progressed past that with like numbers, with investing, budgeting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, wild. And then the fact that 5 years later you could then buy a house in cash is mind-boggling. So,
So
what was that process like? I feel like we got to hear more about this.
okay, we got to put some asterisks in here. So this was 2011 at that point. So it was the bottom of the market for a lot of different places. So I live in Phoenix, and that's where it hit pretty much rock bottom in 2011, and it started picking up after that. And so I just ended up having enough money in my account where the intent wasn't to buy a house in cash. It was just to put a really good down payment, maybe have some money to fix things up. But what ended up happening was I just kept looking and looking for multiple houses. And we're talking about like houses around like $70,000. I mean, like people's car paint, like cars are worth $70,000. And like I was looking at houses at that value back then. And I was about to get a house and close on it, but like some things happened. And so I lost out on it. And then the house I did end up buying, what ended up happening was this guy just, he had an investing portfolio. So this was just one of many houses, and he had the house up for 40,000. And then I was in there saying, hey, I have 35 in cash, you take it. And he apparently had bigger offers, but he was impressed with how much I was able to save for as young as I was. And he ended up taking my offer because he also did need the cash right then and there. So a lot of it just came down to hard work and luck coming together. And I think if I wasn't adamant about putting money aside for something big, I wouldn't be in a position to be able to have made that call to say, hey, I want to buy this house, all of it in cash at once, and then be good and done with it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like the stars really aligned for you on that. And I love that he recognized, like, holy crap, this 21-year-old's coming to me with $35,000 in cash. I'm going to reward that behavior. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and it meant a lot to me for sure because I still own the property and I actually rent it out on Airbnb now.
That was going to be my next question is, do you still own it and what are you doing with it? So right now it's cash flowing for you?
Oh, 100%. So I don't have a mortgage on it. And then when we moved out, we put a couple $1,000s into it with redecorating it, furnishing it, and everything. And within a year, actually, we made our money back from that Airbnb.
Oh, that's amazing. And I can only imagine the appreciation too if you bought it in 2011 at the bottom of the market. That's got to be one of your best investments.
Oh, it is by far my best. I did some remodeling when we bought the place because it was a little worn down and we got to set it up the way we liked it. But even with that, in total, where the house is probably valued around like 300,000.
Dang, for a $70,000 like cost basis, not bad. Obviously, add more to it with all the remodels and all that good stuff, but very cool. Do you plan on holding on to it for a long time, I assume, now that you've got it also
Yeah.
cash flowing?
Yeah, I mean, it's cash flowing at this point, and I think it's just bringing more value to me than just sitting there. Or
Mhm,
even if I wanted to sell it, I don't. Parts of me are like, what would I do with that kind of money,
mhm.
right? If I sold it, and honestly, the thing would be just to go buy a property. So I'm like, why would I
Why?
go through all the headaches of selling one and just buying another? Where this one has a lot of sentimental value now because I'm like, it's my first, and like
Yeah.
all the work that went into it as well.
Yeah. So then after you purchased your property at that age, did you go on to purchase more properties or did you start diversifying your investment portfolio? Tell us a little bit more about your investment journey.
Yeah, so it would have been great if I kept buying instead of remodeling the house because I could have bought more houses at the cheap end. But the market started picking back up. And by the time I got to a position of having any good amount of money to even do as a down payment, the market was pretty much recovering at that point. And so for me, I was looking at other investments. So I started doing a little bit more into the stock market, keeping a little bit of money aside for just other adventures that I wanted to take and experience a little bit more of life. Because it was a lot of work to save up and put money aside to be able to buy the house, especially at 19, 20 years old. Most of my friends were like spending all their money on everything. And so I did want to enjoy a little bit of it. So I did let go of the gas a little bit on
Yeah.
that. And yeah, I mean, it would have been nice, but also at the same time, I'm still in a good position. So I don't think it was the worst.
And I think there is that importance of the balancing act of being able to enjoy your 20s and also like allowing yourself to build wealth. Obviously, now in your 30s, you're able to like be like, heck yes, I'm so glad I did that. But you were able to.
I'm 29, okay?
Sir, you said you were 21 in 2011. I can do math.
I'm kidding.
He's like, how dare you assume my age? I'm like, no, I counted.
That was
Oh
a
my
test
gosh.
and you passed. You passed the
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really good at basic addition. But I think it's one of the things that so many of us, we always say once we get into investing, we're like, man, I really wish I got started at XYZ age. And you're like, I did that. And then I was like, you know what? I also need to enjoy these years. So I think that's really fantastic. It sounds like your wife was involved in the property as well. Was she also pretty into finance?
No.
No.
Not so much. No, definitely not. She actually was only involved when we turned it into the Airbnb. I actually owned it before we got married and had all that taken care of on my own. But the Airbnb transition, that was her assistance as well, because we themed it. So we have a little theme going on with the property. So it's a little bit like in between a basic Airbnb and like a high premium. Like it's
And I've seen it. I've seen pictures. It's really
I
cute.
do show you, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's adorable. It definitely, you could tell it had a woman's touch in it for sure.
Yeah, so she wasn't as involved with like financial. Like I do all the finances for our personal as well too.
Gotcha. So for you, what would you say over the years your biggest like financial hurdle was?
The hurdles, I think for me, honestly, it was actually the balancing act of wanting something bigger for saving and then also enjoying my time. It sounds weird. I think for most people, there's big mistakes that they made. But for me, I think it was partly the mistake of maybe not enjoying a little bit more of my money. It worked out for me. So I'm not like worried about it. But I think if there's anybody that's listening, that's, man, I'm just like all in on putting all my money away, I would look at like the possibilities of like slowly letting go of that gas pedal, because as much as I love saving for big investments or just having money put away, like I also do really enjoy like travel and experiencing life and having the things that I want without feeling like I'm sacrificing my future self's opportunities.
100%. And before we started recording, we were talking about that even on the entrepreneur side of being like, okay, sometimes it's like full foot on the gas pedal and sometimes it's okay. But also I have to enjoy the flexibility. Like today, I haven't been grocery shopping in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, I really need to do that. And I'm a grocery orderer, but I felt stupid doing that. I'm at my parents' place in the middle of nowhere and like ordering my groceries is like just dumb because it's so easy to go and get my own groceries. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And at 9 o'clock today, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go grocery shopping right now. And I felt guilty about it. But I'm like, Chloe, what is the point of being your own boss if you can't go do something like this in the middle of the day? Like, it's okay.
Hashtag adulting. Wow.
Yeah, I get to do what I want. I meal prep too, Dennis. I meal prepped too. I know. It took me like 2 hours to do it all.
There is a fascinating thing because you're bringing up groceries, and I actually used to love grocery shopping. I don't do it as often anymore because we do HelloFresh, the one where the meals come prepped and everything ready for you. And it was so fascinating to me because there was a time period when we were building up businesses. I had my YouTube content, and then my wife was building up a retail store from like 2017 for 3 or 4 years. We were just like really sacrificing everything else. So there was a time period where like I didn't spend money at like the grocery store or anything. And then I had the opportunity to start like having actual money in my pocket. And then instead of like still trying to scrounge for everything, I can't even say the right word.
Yeah,
like, scrape for every penny. And now I'm at a position where I'm like, okay, I could spend a little bit more and just have the groceries come to me, which is the HelloFresh. And it costs a little bit more than if I did it myself. But that time I save is so worth
seriously,
like the value of everything. Like whether it's for me to be able to work more or just to be able to enjoy more of my own time.
100%. And that's the thing that I've had to learn over the years, because I used to be a really frugal person when I was in that stage of investing as much as possible in the first couple of years. And now I'm at this point where it's like my income is way up and I've already done the hard work of laying the foundation of investing enough that I like, even if I don't invest more, I'll be okay. But it's, hey, it's okay because your time is way more important. Like, you don't need to be frugal about everything. So I've just been on the opposite end where I've gone so far to the other side where I'm like, psh, I will order everything. I will like all of the services. So I'm like, all right, Chloe, maybe we should go to the grocery store once a month.
Were you Uber eating every day?
No, but when I was traveling, because I don't know if you remember, I was on a road trip across country for 9 months. And
Oh,
so I was eating out a ton. And so when I finally got back to central Illinois, I was like, we need to take a chill pill on all of this, not only for my like wallet, but also my health.
yeah. I think wasn't that part of it where you were actually in Phoenix or like the Scottsdale
Yes.
area? And I was like,
And we weren't
oh,
even
girl.
friends then. I know. And
Well,
I showed you the terrible Airbnb I stayed in. And you're like, I had an Airbnb. And I was like,
like,
damn
girl.
it. I know. We met, I think, 2 or 3 months after, like officially, really. Yeah, so I feel you on that for sure. Okay. You've mentioned your YouTube channel before, and I want to talk more about that because I find YouTube fascinating. It's so much work, but it can be incredibly lucrative as well. What on earth got you into, out of all the platforms you could get into, what got you into building content on YouTube?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I actually, first off, don't really like social media personally a lot. Like I consume it, but I don't really like to produce for it outside of YouTube. It was
Mhm.
really fascinating. I actually had multiple other YouTube channels before the one that I run now, which is called Tru Financials. And so for me, there was just something about video content where the idea of creating something once and then it just always being there to have people find it was always fascinating to me. YouTube
Mhm.
is essentially the second biggest search engine in the world. So for me, I just saw that as a great opportunity of cloning myself and then just having versions of myself work nonstop 24 hours a day. And I think that was really enticing to me. And I just was not good enough at writing where, doing blogs and being on Google searches was as enticing for me. So I went the
Mhm.
second best route, which was YouTube. And so I actually tried a channel out in, I don't know, 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. That failed pretty miserably. And then when I went traveling for Europe or traveling through Europe for a year, I tried doing that as well, where I shared my journey on travel and doing traveling tips and all that. And that also failed miserably, thank goodness, because I do not like sharing my travels with
Me
people.
neither. Oh my God, I tried so many blogs. I hate it.
Yeah, it's like I just want to enjoy me. And if somebody actually enjoys sharing their journey while they're on their trips, kudos to you. But I'm like, I just
Yes.
don't like it. I think it takes away a lot of what it's meant for me.
Uh,
And then so after we came back from our travels, I just kept wanting to really do something on YouTube. And I was like, okay, why not talk about the thing that's pretty much been the most consistent thing in my life as far as a passion, which was talking about money. And when I started, it was actually something where I wanted to be like that guru, but not like a creep guru, but like more of a, hey, this is what I'm doing with my money. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just showing you another version of a way to manage it, whether it's how I budget, how I look at investments, how I plan for the future, and just share those tips and tricks and insights with audience members. But that started back in 2017. And I think for the first 2.5 years, that's where it was going. And it was growing decently well. But like you mentioned earlier, and I think anybody that's interested in YouTube, it's like, it's great, but oh my gosh, it is
it's a
some of the hardest
lot
work
of work.
I've ever had to do because you're wearing so many hats. Like you're a
Yeah.
producer, you're an editor, you're a writer, you're just so many different things all at once. And
Mhm.
I was up for the challenge for sure. Even though I failed multiple times prior, knowing that if I am talking about the thing I love the most, I should have continued that passion and it worked out. And anyway, so I was doing about the guru stuff, personal stuff for the first 2.5 years, and the growth was okay, but it just wasn't where I wanted it to be. And YouTube does this thing where I don't know if Instagram does this or not, and you can let me know, but YouTube was just like pushing me in a certain direction and was guiding me saying, hey, based off of your like results and your searches and people watching your video content, like if you focus on this, you're going to see much better results. And there was a time period where I complained to my mastermind group for 2 months that I didn't want to transition to tutorials because that takes away your personality. You could still be a personality, but like real tutorials, like really straight to the point, no fluff stuff. You just have to just do
Right.
the tutorial and get out of there. I don't even share my name most of the time in my videos or anything
Mm.
anymore because when I did that transition, which was really hard at first, it was something where I found out that I was just really good at showing people how to do things in the most simple way possible, again,
Mhm.
without any of that fluff. And so the channel exploded. And that first year I transitioned, I made more money that year than I ever had working for any other person in my entire life. And that was just
Dang.
mind blowing.
That's crazy. Do you mind sharing numbers? It's okay if you
So that first year I made close to, I think, 150,000, which was,
dang.
again, not even close to anything I was making with anybody else. And that was at that time the biggest income I made. And then the following year definitely surpassed that as well too. So
Dang, that's so cool. And what's crazy is a lot of that is old videos, right? It's not all the new content.
almost exclusively. It's so
Mhm.
weird how YouTube really works, where a lot of times, unless you're like the biggest of the biggest stars on the platform, a lot of times your biggest earning videos are videos that are 6 months, a year, 2 years old. Like people can go to a channel's page and click most popular, and most of the time it's going to be videos years and years ago.
Yeah.
I have videos that I made back in 2017 that are still making me money today.
That's what's so interesting about it because it's not like that with Instagram. I mean, with Instagram, yes, Instagram, the algorithm will definitely gently push you in the direction that they want you to go because you'll see like their better views, better engagement, all of that stuff. So if you're smart, you pay attention to that and you replicate that content as best as you can. They're never explicitly like, "Hey, we've been watching your channel and we think that you should be doing content around this." Whereas I know like YouTube will send you newsletters saying, "These videos are performing well," or whatever. But the shelf life of an Instagram reel or piece of content is like at most months. Like a reel could later on still get views. That's rare though. Usually it's 24 hours to a week. So
Oof.
YouTube, it's years, which is incredible. And same with blogging. You get
Yeah.
this constant thing. So it's like the ability to potentially actually create passive income from YouTube. Obviously, you do the work up front, but eventually it becomes passive. It's a realistic.
There are possibilities for that to happen, and I can actually break it down a little bit because there are. So I have a mastermind that I had for the longest time where it was a bunch of other financial YouTubers, and it just got started because I was having a rough time, even with enjoying the topic and like the process and everything. It's still hard, like
Yeah.
especially early on in YouTube when you're making no money for all this time and effort that you're putting in. Like I had a regular 40-hour a week job, and I was putting in 30, 40 hours a week on the YouTube channel. So there were times where it was like really rough. And so I ended up gathering a bunch of other small YouTubers at the time that are in the same niche as me. And we just would all talk and share insights and struggles. And that helped keep us all in line with wanting to be there still. And I put that together, and it was really cool because years later, when I did that transition, they were those people that were supporting me. But what was interesting is some of them made to that same path that I was intentionally wanting to be on, which is like sharing my journey and my process of what I was doing. And their content isn't the same as mine. So because I
Hmm.
do tutorials, mine is what they call evergreen, which is things that will just live on forever, pretty much
Mhm.
be important no matter when somebody's watching it. Where a lot of the friends that I watch, a lot of their content's somewhat news related or now up to date
Mm.
information. And so if they don't release content within a week or two, like their views and their income goes down pretty substantially. Where there's been multiple times now in my process, because I mentioned about letting go of the gas, where I could not do videos and like work for a month and like my income stays almost relatively the same.
That's amazing. That's how I would want to do it. I wouldn't want to have to constantly be up on the news. The idea of doing that stresses me out. And like even going back to the like travel, writing about that or doing like that, I was similar to you where I was constantly trying to find my thing and eventually landed on personal finance. But like the idea of doing something that's ever changing and that you have to like constantly be looking at like the newest hacks, the greatest deals, the best discounts. No interest in that whatsoever. And like, that's the beautiful thing about personal finance is like the actual brass tacks of how you build wealth, it doesn't really change. Like,
Yeah.
every once in a while, there's something new that you can talk about, like student loan forgiveness or whatever. But like generally, it's all the same. I love that yours is evergreen. It's going to make me think about when I start YouTubing again someday.
We'll see. We'll
We'll
see.
see.
We'll
Yeah.
come back and listen to this podcast 3 years later, and we'll see where you're
You're like, oh, Chloe, you still only have 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. What's your problem?
at.
I was gonna ask you, do you edit all your own videos as well? You don't have anybody who's editing them for you?
So it would be wise for me to do that at some point. So my thing is the way the channel has evolved is my editing time is like very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
So I like actually multitask. I like watch videos while
Mm.
editing because I have the editing and recording down to pretty good science where I actually don't even need to watch the video while I'm editing it, and then just watch it at the end once I like verify everything before exporting. It's gotten to a point where I still can do it myself. It doesn't take a lot of time, but I still multitask. But the biggest issue for me is that there's a lot of personal information that I put up. I am logging in and creating accounts with different brokerages. So a lot of times like my social security number's up there, address and all that. And I just need to find somebody to do it that I would trust. But
yeah, I didn't think about that. You got to cover all that up.
Yeah, but even then it's not that much time for me, and I'm like, oh, I create content. It's such a high like speed that it doesn't feel like it's a lot of additional work outside of what I already do.
How much time does it take you to edit a video? Just curious.
So back in the day when I was making videos that were like, I don't know, 8 to 12 minutes, like it could take me maybe 40 minutes to do it. But the way I do tutorials now, I actually film all of it at once. So if I'm doing a tutorial on an app, like I'll go from start to finish, I'll record all of it in 30 minutes. And that's maybe like 10 to 20 videos, just depending on the piece of content. And then each video would probably take me like 5 to 10 minutes, just really depending.
What? Oh my
science. Like
I'm doing it wrong.
I cut out so many different little things that were adding up in time. So like I just learned that if I make a mistake, there's certain things that I do in the videos that like are signals in my editing that I'm like, oh, I know that's a bad clip, so I don't even have to look at it. Or when I record, I actually got a way to record my phone while recording myself on camera at the exact same time, so I don't have to get 2 different videos to put together. Like, it's such a seamless process, but it took me years. Again, like we talked about earlier, like I dedicated years of my life to get to this point where there's like that one joke or something like that where it's like at the beginning, like you work so hard for very little, and then later in life, like you work so little for a lot. Kind of where that balance has shifted in that process where I was making nothing working so hard. And now if I didn't want to work hard, I would still be making a lot of money. But that was only because of all the work I've done in the past, which is
and I think that's important to highlight because so many of us like they see it and they're like, oh, you were an overnight success, you just exploded. And it's no, there was years of mistakes, years of figuring it out that led us here. And now, and I'm sure someday we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, and then there was years of other figuring it out as well. So I appreciate your transparency on that. I didn't know you had 2 previously failed YouTube channels, but I love that because like same.
They're actually still up. I won't tell you what they are.
But fair enough.
But they are cringeworthy and they're terrible, and I love them. Like I really do. I even love my original content on my main channel because it's just like it shows you the progress and it shows where you've been. And I just love that so much with anything that I fail. It's just still see it and then see where I'm at now and just be like, yeah. Like,
yeah. And it transformed you into who you are now, 100%. It's the same with the Clo Bear back in the day when I was Clo_Bear writing about like mental health and relationships. There's some articles up there that I'm like, this is really cringe, but it still helps some people. There's people who will email me about mental health blog that I posted in 2017. And I'm always like, this is why I leave it up. Because I can never look at it. I will never read this ever again. But I like that it's there. For somebody, I always like to give folks tips in these calls or in these conversations. For somebody who's interested in getting into YouTube, what would you say your 3 biggest tips are for somebody who's like listening and they're like, you know what, this sounds like up my alley. I don't like to write, but I like to film. So maybe I would want to do something like this.
3 tips. Okay. So if there is somebody listening, and I know what we were talking about, some of it sounded like dreadful because I was like about how hard it is at first. The reward is there, just like anything else, I think. So I think one of the biggest tips is consistency. I think being consistent in what you're doing. So when you're getting started, I think what happens is a lot of people get really excited. The energy is there. And then 3 to 4 weeks later, it's getting really tough. You got to actually have to like put in the effort and learn, and then it becomes a little bit more of a job. And it is a job, even if you want to do it for fun, like it's a job at that point. And so I think being consistent with putting in the effort, because you will get better as long as you're putting in the effort to continue to grow, you'll see those marginal improvements happen over time. Like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. And so I think if you look at, for example, like my first video to like my 100th video, there's going to be a huge difference. But then if you look at my 100th till my 200th, there's even more improvement. But if you looked at my 500th video to my first video, like it looks like there's 2 different people on camera. And so I think that consistency was so important in that process. I think the second tip would be finding other people within your space, within your realm of like subscribers or experience. I think that's huge. I think having that mastermind that I put together, and I know you run a mastermind that you host as well, shout out. But I think it's one of those things where having those people around you that can help encourage you, maybe learn from their mistakes so you don't have to make all of the mistakes, and then being able to encourage one another is huge. And then I would say the third thing would be probably just consistently learning how YouTube works. I've been in it for 5.5 years, and I'm still every day watching videos on how the algorithm works. What are some of the best tips and tricks? I like to think that I'm at like the peak at that point, because if I'm at peak, then there's nothing else but downhill for me. And so for me, I'm like, I'm still wanting to learn. And YouTube changes all the time. Like how it was 5.5 years ago is not the same how it is today. I'm being relevant to my audience and being helpful to my audience because I'm making sure that I can get the content that I need out to them at the best way possible by staying up to date with all the news for YouTube and how it works with the algorithms and just being attentive to all that.
Yeah, I love that. Do you still run your mastermind?
So my original one, no, we have a group chat now. So I converted to that. And now I run another mastermind and they jump in from time to time as well too. So they're more friends now than just people that I chat with on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I love it. I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is just promote yourself. Tell folks where they can find you, if there's any way they can work with you. Give us all the stuff.
Yeah, for me, like I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty much just on YouTube. I think for me, focusing on that platform is the most viable thing for the content that I create and how to be most helpful. So people can find me on there, which is Tru Financials. You can misspell it and I'll still pop up because I'm that good at SEO. I'm just kidding.
Yes, I love it.
But also too, if people just want to contact me, whether they have questions on things or somebody just wants some help on their process with YouTube, you guys can contact me. It's at contact@trufinancials.com. It's on my YouTube page as well too. And that way they can reach out and
I love it. We'll leave links to all that down below. Okay, my question that I ask everybody who comes on this podcast is, what's your very first money memory? And sometimes it's a negative thing, sometimes it's a positive thing. Either way, we want to hear it.
So first money memory. So the first time I can remember money.
Anything to do with money.
Oh, so one of the first times it actually popped up right away. I was really young. I was at our old house and one of our first house for my parents. And we had like my aunts and uncles around. And one of my uncles had this game that he was playing with all the kids and I was involved. We had to keep our hand out and like have a gap between our thumb and our fingers. And then he would drop a dollar bill. And if we can catch it, we get to keep it. The first thing I can remember that involved anything with money.
Oh my God, I love that. No, but I love it because it's like there's such random memories and it's always like a coin toss. Pun intended, but it's always a coin toss on whether it's going to be a good money memory or a bad money memory. And that sounds like a pretty good one. Do you think it impacted your view of money at all?
No, not even.
You're like, money is a game and all I got to do is catch it.
That wasn't the case.
That's what did you ever catch it?
Yeah, I did catch it. It was, nice. I think, a $1 bill, which with inflation, that was like $4 or $5, homie.
Oh my God, I love it with the inflation. Awesome. I love it. Thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. It's good catching up with you.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast with Denis. Denis was a quick friend. He's super sarcastic, and so I feel like we speak the same language. And when we hung out, it was like, oh, we understand each other. So it was really nice to have him on the podcast. I did not realize that he bought his first home at 21, which is wild to me. But his work on YouTube really inspires me to get better at YouTube and start doing more of that. But we'll see. There's only so many hours in the day. We'll see what 2023 has in store for me. So anyway, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. I hope you guys subscribe and rate and review us. It helps us out a lot. It helps us grow. And it also tells me that you like what we're doing and you want to see more podcast episodes and things along those lines. And also, if you made it this far and you're thinking, man, I really want to get in on some of that. I want to start managing my money so that someday I could buy a house. Be sure to head on over to thelazyinvestorscourse.com/guide, and we will get you your free guide filled with templates, filled with budgeting hacks, all of the things that you need to get started on your money journey. And of course, since we're talking about finance, nothing on this show is intended to be financial advice. So keep that in mind and always consult with a professional if you need information about your own situation. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye.